Imagine waking up one morning and hearing that an army was approaching your city, an army so fast, so disciplined, and so ruthless that entire kingdoms surrendered before a single battle was fought. People whispered terrifying stories about them. Some claimed they never lost. Others believed they were unstoppable. Within just a few decades, they conquered more land than any empire before or since. Their leader began life as a poor boy, whose family had been abandoned in the harsh Mongolian wilderness. That boy would become known as Genghis Khan. But here's the question. If the Mongol Empire became the largest land empire in human history, how did it collapse so quickly? The answer isn't what most people think. At its peak, the Mongol Empire stretched from Eastern Europe across the Middle East, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. It covered nearly 24 million square kilometers. No empire in history has ever controlled more connected land. Its armies were feared across continents. Kings surrendered, cities fell, entire civilizations changed forever. Yet less than 2 centuries after reaching its greatest size, the empire had fractured into smaller kingdoms. So, how did an empire that seemed impossible to defeat lose its grip on the world? Let's go back to where it all began. Long before he became Genghis Khan, his name was Temujin. He wasn't born into wealth. He wasn't born into power. In fact, his childhood was filled with hardship. When Temujin was only 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe. Soon after, his own tribe abandoned his family. Imagine being left alone on the freezing Mongolian steppe with almost nothing to eat. Many people would have given up. Temujin didn't. Instead, he learned to survive. He hunted, he fought, and slowly, he began gathering loyal followers. Not because they feared him, but because he rewarded loyalty and skill instead of noble birth. This simple idea would change history forever. For centuries, the Mongol tribes constantly fought each other. Temujin had a different vision. Instead of endless conflict, he wanted unity. One by one, he defeated rival tribes. Some joined willingly, others didn't have a choice. Finally, in 1206, the tribal leaders gathered. They gave Temujin a new title, Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. But becoming leader of Mongolia wasn't enough. Genghis Khan looked beyond the horizon. He wanted an empire. What made the Mongols almost unstoppable? It wasn't just their numbers. In fact, their armies were often smaller than those they fought. Their greatest weapon was speed. Every Mongol warrior traveled with several horses. When one became tired, they simply switched to another. This allowed them to move incredible distances in a single day. Their archers could fire arrows with deadly accuracy, even while riding at full speed. But perhaps their most powerful weapon was fear. Before attacking, they often spread stories of their victories. Cities heard what happened to those who resisted. Many surrendered without fighting. Those who opened their gates were often spared. Those who resisted risked complete destruction. Psychological warfare became just as important as military strength. The Mongols didn't just defeat armies, they defeated confidence. Under Genghis Khan, and later his successors, the empire expanded at an astonishing pace. They conquered northern China, Central Asia, Persia, parts of the Middle East, and reached the edges of Europe. Trade flourished. The famous Silk Road became safer than it had been in centuries. Ideas, technology, religions, and goods traveled across continents. For many people, the Mongol Empire wasn't just an age of conquest. It also connected civilizations like never before. Ironically, the same size that made the empire impressive would eventually become its greatest weakness. After Genghis Khan died in 1227, his descendants inherited an empire unlike anything the world had seen. But ruling it proved far more difficult than conquering it. The empire stretched across thousands of kilometers. Communication was slow. Different regions had different cultures, languages, and traditions. Soon, members of the royal family began competing for power. Instead of one united empire, it gradually split into several independent khanates: the Golden Horde, the Chagatai Khanate, the Ilkhanate, and the Yuan dynasty in China. Each ruled its own territory. Each followed its own interests. Without strong central leadership, unity slowly disappeared. At the same time, local rebellions grew stronger. Trade routes became less secure. New powers emerged. Over time, the world's largest empire quietly faded into history, not because it was conquered by a single enemy, but because it became too vast to hold together. The story of the Mongol Empire isn't just about conquest, it's about leadership, innovation, and the challenge of managing immense power. Genghis Khan united people who had spent generations fighting each other. He built the largest contiguous empire in history, but even the greatest empire couldn't escape one simple truth. Conquering land is much easier than holding it together. History reminds us that every empire rises, every empire changes, and eventually, every empire falls.